Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online Special Request character build with me, Sherman. Today guys, I'm bringing you the Arcane Battlemage. Now, a friend of mine requested this, an actual real friend, requested a more survivable sorcerer type character, and that's what I made him. But before I get started, you guys know there's a disclaimer. This build is made for role play, casual play. It is not meant for meta play. Now that that's out of the way, the Arcane Battlemage is basically someone who ties into the arcane powers and utilizes them in battle. So this is a battle mage, so it is a heavy armor build that is made for magical combat up close. It's not one that stand back and cast spells. It's one that gets in the face of the enemy and stands there and dishes out damage while fighting. So let's get into it. Starting with, we are an Arcane Battlemage Sorcerer character. It is a Dark Elf, and that's what they play. It's on the live servers, so that's why I made it a Dark Elf. It can be any race, though. I'm going to let you know that now. It would be better if you were one of the magical type races, but any race can play this. Alright, so now that you guys know that, the primary role of this build is damage dealer. Now, it can play a tank, it can play a healer. So, to play this as a damage dealer or a healer, you're going to want to put 64 points into Magicka. Now, to play this as a tank, you're going to want to take out of the Magicka and put in enough health to put you at 30k health, about that, and then the rest back into Magicka. The reason why is this way you can still maximize your max Magicka while having survivability enough to tank the content that you want to tank. Now, this is primarily more of an off tank than it is a main tank. So, yeah. So it can tank dungeons fine. It can tank veteran DLC or veteran dungeons fine. DLC dungeons, normal and veteran, it can do fine. When it comes to trials, it's, like I said, it could probably tank normal trials. Veteran trials might be a little bit more difficult to tank with this unless you're using an ice staff. And then you can probably tank a veteran trial, possibly even on veteran, possibly on veteran difficulty as a main tank, but it's primarily a off tank. Alright, so now going over the stats. We have 34k Magicka, 22k health, 20k stamina. Now, people are going to ask me, why do you have 20k in stamina as a Magicka-based character? Here's why you have 20k stamina. Because it takes a lot of resources to block, dodge roll, break free, and do a lot of other things in this game. And if you're spamming, if you're not spamming, but if you're burning through resources too fast, you won't have enough resources. So having a 20k max stam really helps you out. Now, if you are using Dubious Cameron Throne, or not Dubious Cameron Throne, Witch Mother's Potent Brew, you will have a 32k Magicka with about a 15k stamina. So you can still have resources to block with, to dodge roll, break free, all that stuff. It's just not going to be as much. Moving on to the mag recovery, we do have 1047. It's low on the low end, but if you do, like I said, if you use Witch Mother's Potent Brew, you go to 32k Magicka, 20k health, 15k stamina, but you get a 1457 mag recovery. And this is still viable even as a damage dealer. Alright, going over spell damage or health recovery 463, 664, stamina recovery. Spell damage is 2558 with a 1720 weapon damage, and that's on the front bar. When you swap bars, it does drop. Or it goes up, sorry. I think I'm on the front bar now. Let's see. Yes. So on the front bar you have 2671 with an 1864 weapon damage, 44% spell critical, 20% weapon critical. We do have an 18,000 spell resistance because we are in heavy armor with a 17,000 physical resist. Now moving on, we are using the Lover Mundus Stone for increased spell and physical penetration. If you wanted to switch to, say, the Thief Stone for higher crit value, you can do that. Or you can even go and get the Atronach Mundus Stone to boost your spell damage. Moving on, we do have Minor Heroism all times and Minor Prophecy on both bars. Heroism is on us because of a gear set. The Minor Prophecy is because of Inner Light. Now, right now we're using Witch Mother's Potent Brew. I usually try to stick to using Tri-Stat Food because I like that greater survivability in my characters. Alright, moving on to the gear sets. Starting with the tripods. These are used for tanking. This is used for damage dealing and healing. So that's the spell power pots. Now, going over the sets. A lot of people are going to notice some similarities between this and the Northern Wind. Please do not think that this is the Northern Wind. It's not. The Northern Wind is a Warden. This is just using the pretty much the same gear as the Northern Wind. So on the monster set, we are wearing a medium helm, invigorating with tri-stats, and it is part of the Ice Heart set. The Ice Heart set on the one piece gives you spell critical, 2-piece. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs X amount of damage for 6 seconds. While the damage shield holds, you deal frost damage, X amount of frost damage to all enemies in a 5-meter area around you every second, and this can happen for every 6 seconds. So the shield is there for 6 seconds, the damage is there for 6 seconds, and as long as you're dealing critical damage, you will proc this all the time. Alright, moving on to the shoulders. We are using, and I know I'm doing this a little differently, but please, I'm going to try this differently this one time and see how it goes. So, shoulders, heavy Divines with a Max Magic enchant. The Divines is there to increase our Mundus Stone value, and then the Max Magic is to boost our Magicka pool. Now, moving on to the chest, which is our next set, we are using a heavy reinforced tri-stat set of Julianus. And this is going to be the 5 body pieces. The chest, the gloves, the belt, the boots, and the legs. So all that is going to be Julianus. Now, Julianus is a really good set for being a damage dealer either in heavy, medium, or light in Magicka, because it gives you spell crit, max Magicka, spell crit, and then spell damage. And it is a craftable set. So we crafted this in heavy reinforced to make sure that we have the highest amount of resistances we can get out of this one piece of gear. That's why we did the reinforced and the tri-stats, so we can hybridize, so we can play tank, healer, and damage dealer, and still have enough resources and stamina to block, dodge roll, break free, and all that. Moving on to the gloves. We are using Divines, again, to boost our Mundus Stone, and a Max Magicka to boost our Max Magicka. On the belt, we are using a light belt, crafted Max Magicka enchant Divines, again, for the same reason as I mentioned before. On the boots, we are using Divines with Max Magicka. This way we get a larger Max Magicka pool by using the Magicka enchants on the smaller pieces, and in the tri-stats in the head, chest, and legs. We can get max health, magic, and stamina almost equal. See, 351, and over here we get 434. We get about 80 more than the other one, which is fine. 80 more Magicka stamina, and 400 and something extra stamina, and 477 health is really going to be good for you in the long run. Greater survivability, more health means more survivability, and then the other resources give you the resources necessary to play your character more effectively. Now, moving on to the final set, we are using Shulk's. Now, Shulk's exoskeleton set is not a very hard set to get. It is an overland set. It drops in Stonefalls, and basically the first faction area for the Ebonheart Pact. Now, Shulk's on the 2-piece gives you max health, 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece spell critical, and then you gain minor heroism at all times while you are in combat, granting you 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. Now this ultimate gen is really good for you because it means that you're going to get more ultimate faster than most other people. That means you're going to be able to drop ultimates more effectively, quicker. And being a magic person, most magicka ultimates for most classes is a very expensive thing. So Shulks is really good for building that max magicka and stuff, or the ultimate really fast. Also, we get that extra spell damage and spell crit. And when you apply this with the Ice Heart spell crit, and then the 2 spell crit from here, plus the extra spell damage, you actually get a lot of spell damage out of these 3 sets, spell crit and spell damage out of these 3 sets. On top of that, we are using 2 Trirune rings, and this is so we can hybridize better, have those higher stats for when we're tanking, when we're damage dealer, and healer, and then the stamina is there for when we need to block, dodge roll, all that kind of stuff. We do have 2 spell damage enchants on each of the rings, or 1 enchant on each ring to count for 2, and this is to maximize our spell damage itself. Now moving on to the necklace, we do have a mag recovery necklace. We are in heavy armor. Heavy armor is really hard to get recovery in, so it's good to go with a infused necklace with recovery. This way, with the 2 invigorating pieces we have, the helm and the leggings, we get actually a little bit more magicka. We get 22 more than the 270, so we get about almost 300, and that 300 actually becomes a lot more when you take into consideration all the percentage increases we get to our recovery itself. Alright, moving on to the weapon. Our primary weapon is a fire staff. It is an Inferno staff. It has a shock damage enchant on it, and it is Nerdhone, and it is part of the Shulk set as well. So the way you're going to set this up is you're going to do Shulk's jewelry and staves, and then you're going to do 5 body pieces of Julianus crafted, and then 2 pieces of Ice Heart, 1 medium, 1 heavy. And then the rest of the body pieces are going to be crafted heavy, except for the belt, which is going to be light. Now, the reason you have Nerdhone here is to boost your overall damage capabilities. On the back bar, we have an infused lightning staff with a weapon and spell damage enchant. We mainly have this here to boost our spell damage, but if you wanted to hybridize this character, you could even do that and go with a stamina set instead of Julianus, and you could still play this character as an effective stamina magicka damage dealer kind of thing, like a hybrid, and it'll still work pretty good. But the reason we use that max spell damage, or the increase to spell and weapon damage, is so we have that ability to play with those other resources if it's necessary for weapon damage, and then spell damage for doing spell damage. Alright, now that I've shown you guys that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the skills, starting with class skills. Now, I get asked this all the time lately, and it's becoming a reoccurring question. Why do you unlock all the class abilities, ultimates, active abilities, and passives if you're not going to use them all with the build? Now, you got to remember, each of these builds that I make is made to work as hybrid type characters. That means they are made to work as any of the 3 roles: tank, healer, and damage dealer. The reason I unlock so many different abilities is so I can take advantage of the different abilities my character has to play different roles in different situations, whether it's PvP, PvE, damage, tank, or healer. I can play all 3 roles in any environment because the character is made to work in all 3 environments, or all the different environments, including dungeons, trials, all overland content, delves, public dungeon, world bosses, dolmens, all that kind of stuff. And most of the time, this character can solo most of that stuff. Like, even dungeons. And in some cases, if you're skilled enough, you could probably solo a few trials with it, but it'd probably take you a long time. But it is very powerful. So that's why we unlock all the class passives and active abilities and ultimates. Or that's why I do. Now moving on to the weapons. We do use primarily a destruction staff only. So those are the active abilities, ultimate, and passives we unlock. If you want to use a resto staff, you can do that. And if you wanted to even learn like sword and shield for tanking, you could do that as well. you got a lot of options in tools that you can learn, because you still have this character still has 122 skill points left to spend. I am on PTS, and I do have the maximum amount of spell or skill points you can get in the game, which is something most people don't have access to. So this is why a lot of times build people show only 1 or 2 weapons in a build, because it's a lot easier to learn 1 or 2 weapons than it is to learn a whole bunch of weapons and their passives and active abilities. Moving on to armor. Light armor, take the top 3. The reason why is because you're going to take advantage of these when you're playing a healer, tank, or damage dealer in heavy armor, because you can take advantage of all the passives here plus this. Medium armor, you only need the top 2 if you're going to play more of a stamina based character or somebody that uses some stamina based stuff. So even this character can use some stamina based abilities like caltrops, rearming trap, and things like that, and take advantage of it, because we do get that higher weapon crit, and we do get that reduced stamina cost and stamina recovery. But primarily we use it for the dodge roll reduction. Now in heavy armor, this is a heavy armor build, so you are going to take all the heavy armor passives and active ability if you want to take it. Now I mainly use the active ability here for when I'm playing in PvP, so I'm not burning through magicka. I can actually use this, even though I do use a magicka buff that's really cheap for this, the Major Ward, Major Resolve. In some cases in Battlegrounds I will use this instead, because it costs me stamina and not magicka. Moving on to world skills. You can be a vampire with this, but you don't have to be. Ultimate and active ability and soul magic plus the passives, I do take those because I do find use in them now. Fighter's Guild, you have the option here to take all of them if you want. If you don't, the best choices here are going to be Ring of Preservation and Rearming Trap. You can use Silver Leash if you're playing a tank, so you have a pull to pull enemies to you, and that is something you can use. Mage's Guild, we do take all the ultimate and all the active abilities plus the passives, because any of these can be used in different situations. Sometimes I like to use Structured Entropy when I tank instead of using Inner Light. Now if I use Structured Entropy, what I do is I go to the class itself, and I will usually take the Daedric Summoning Bound Aegis and put on my bar, so I still get that high max magic pool with my character, but I still get that the Structured Entropy. So I actually have 2 slots that are taken for what I'm tanking, and that doesn't leave me a lot of space to work with. So that's one of the problems with playing a sorcerer, is you don't get a lot of space to work with. Psijic Order, ultimate, active abilities, and passives, again, just like the Mage's Guild, because I do use these for different roles, different situations. Same thing with Undaunted. Always get your Undaunted passives though. Alliance War, Assault, take the skills that best reflect your ability to play the character. In PvE, if you do a lot of PvP, then unlock all the active abilities and passives, because you can take advantage of those in PvP. I just take advantage of what affects me in PvE. Now, racial, we are Dark Elf, so we do get Dynamic, which increases our max magicka and stamina by 1875. And we get the flame resistance, plus we gain immunity to burning status effect, and then we get ruination, which increases weapon and spell damage by 258. The nice thing here is that you can hybridize really well with a Dark Elf. Now, like I said, any race can play this. So you can be a Breton, you can be an Argonian, you can be Khajiit, you can be anything with this build. It's just you're going to have different resource pools based on that. So just warning you now. Now moving on to crafting. Alchemy, medicinal use, it's really good. When you're using a potion, your resulting effects last 30% longer. This is primarily for when you're playing dungeons and trials. I don't use a lot of spell power pots or weapon power pots or anything like that, or whatever, while I'm in Overland, because I have other abilities I can use to boost that stuff. I use Inner Light, as you can see, and I do use Power Surge. So this boosts my Major Sorcery and Major Brutality. So it gives me weapon and spell damage increased by 20% for 33 seconds. So I do use this most of the time. when I'm playing this character because it's a self-heal. It's crazy ridiculous. Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur. Alright, now we're going to go over the skills we have on the bars, and the way I use them is kind of going to be different than most people. So the first ability we have is called Crushing Shock. This does flame damage, frost damage, and shock damage. And as you can see, the flame and frost are the same, but the shock is higher, and that's because the sorcerer gets 5% more shock damage. It's built into their class. It's one of their passives. That's another reason why I take all the different passes, so I can take advantage of every aspect to my character. Moving on, enemies hit while casting are interrupted, sent off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds. So the nice thing is that you do all 3 damage types and then on one hit. And then on top of that, you get that extra ability to interrupt, set them off balance, stun them, all that kind of stuff with one ability. It's really good. Next ability we have is called Crystal Frags. Now this one, conjure a dark crystal to bombard an enemy dealing X amount of magic damage. Casting any other magic ability has a 35% chance of causing your next crystal fragments to be instant and deal 20% more damage and cost 50% less magicka. So this is what you do. You wait for this thing to proc so you can fire it off at a cheaper cost and everything. You do not use this if you do not have this procced. Our next ability we have is called Flame Pulsar. Now this is because this character is an upfront fighter. They stand on the front lines just like the tanks do, just like knights do, just like some of the fighters do, and some ranger types and even some rogue types will do. Stand on the front line, and this is how we're going to take advantage of this character, is by using AoE damage when we're in trash packs, or even in PvP, if you have a lot of enemies around us. You do this, you also, not only do you do flame damage to all nearby enemies within a 6-meter radius, you also apply Minor Mangle, reducing their max health by 10% for 33 seconds. Now, I don't spam this. I fire this once, go back to my Force Pulse, because unless I'm fighting a lot of trash at once, will I spam this ability. The next ability we have is our Execute. Now, an Execute is something that you use to execute an enemy. Basically, when they get to a certain percentage health, you use this ability because it does more damage. Now, this one is called Endless Fury. Now, this one calls down a lightning strike dealing X amount of shock damage. If the enemy falls to or below 20% health within 4 seconds of being struck, an explosion deals an additional X amount of shock damage to them and X amount of shock damage to other enemies nearby. I like this ability because it not only does damage to a single target, it hits other targets as well if there's other targets around. If an enemy is killed within 5 seconds of being hit by this ability, you restore X amount of magicka. This really allows you to stay in the fight more effectively when you can kill an enemy quick and you get those resources back, because this allows those greater resources for you to use in combat. The next ability we have is called Inner Light. Now, some people are going to say it's a lot smarter to go with the Daedric summoning Bound Aegis, because this will give you 8% max magicka over Inner Light's 5%. The thing is that if you have the passives for the Mages Guild, Inner Light actually gives you 7% max magicka and 2% mag recovery on top of that. So this is actually a little bit more, I'm not going to say better, but it's a little bit more effective because it also gives you Major Prophecy, which increases your spell critical by 2191. So this is automatically applied to you to where your potions for magic that you use for spell power pots, you're already getting one of the effects of it. So it's really nice. Next ability we have is called Eye of the Flame. Now, like I said, this is an arcane caster. If you guys don't know anything about arcane casters are basically people who use all different types of magic. They are arcane based. That means they use a lot of fire, lightning, magic based damage stuff to aid or do damage or whatever they need to do in combat. But this ability, basically you build a storm around you for 2 seconds, and then it lays waste to all enemies for 7 seconds, dealing X amount of flame damage every second for those 7 seconds. So it's a really nice AoE damage ability ultimate thing. And as you can see, it only costs us 213 from 250, where it would normally cost for most spellcasters. but Sorks do get a 15% reduced ultimate cost. So, moving on to our back bar, we have Lightning Flood. Now, Lightning Flood and Liquid Lightning are very similar in their morphs. Like, there's Lightning Splash, the original, and then there's Lightning Flood, and then there's Liquid Lightning. Very similar. Liquid Lightning lasts 10 seconds, so 2 seconds more than this, so it gets 2 more ticks of damage, but it's not as big of an area. It's a very small, tight area, so if you don't stack the trash really good, it's not as effective. So I use this with this particular character. So this one deals X amount of damage every second for 8 seconds, shock damage that is, and then an ally standing within the Nexus can activate the Conduit synergy, dealing X amount of shock damage to enemies around them. So it basically blasts out from them and deals damage. So it's really a nice synergy because it gives them resources back, but it also does damage. Not a lot of resources, but some. Our next ability is called Blockade of Storms. Now, you can use either morph of Blockade of Storms, or this or the other morph for it. And I don't remember the name of the other morph for the Blockade or whatever, but it's the Wall of Elements, and then it's morphed into a Blockade of Storms. This one, in particular, what it does is when you set down the wall, it does X amount of damage, shock damage to enemies every second for 8 seconds. Any enemy that's concussed will be set off balance for 5. That's why we use it. We use the Fire Staff with a shock enchant, is so we get that greater chance to set enemies, concuss them with the shock enchant, so we can set them off balance with the Wall of Lightning. All right, moving on to the next ability, we have Power Surge. Now this one invokes Meridia's name to gain Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20% for 33 seconds while active. Dealing a critical strike heals you for X amount of health. This effect can occur once every second. So for the full duration of 33 seconds, any time that you deal a critical strike, you heal yourself. You do a lot of critical damage. You constantly heal yourself. Just letting you know. Next ability we have is our Resistance buff. And we use this primarily because, one, it does do damage every second for 23 seconds, and also grants you major resolve and major ward, increasing physical and spell resistance by 5,280, and then activating this grants major expedition for a brief period, increasing your movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. This allows you better mobility on the combat field. So if you're in a dungeon, you get better mobility in when you have bigger areas to play in. And then in trials, bigger areas, to overland bigger areas, that kind of stuff, you get that greater burst right out the door. So it allows you to get right into the fight really quick. Next ability we have is Inner Light. We have this here because of the Max Magicka and this Major Prophecy. And then the final ability we have is another ultimate, and that is our Greater Storm Atronach. Now this one, you summon an immobile Storm Atronach at the target location. Its rival deals X amount of damage, shock damage, and stuns the enemies for 3 seconds. The Atronach zaps the closest enemy, dealing X amount of shock damage every second. An ally can activate the synergy Charged Lightning, granting the ally and the Atronach Major Berserk, increasing their damage done by 25% for 8 seconds. So if you see Sork drop this, and this is the primary ultimate we will use, we're going to drop this every chance this is up because it does a lot of damage, but it also gives us that ability to do that synergy. So that's it. Now that's the skills that we use on this in its battle situation or damage dealer situation, but let's go ahead and take a look at the CP before I show you guys a little bit of how this thing can work in action. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces your damage taken against direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 18 in the Spell Shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1729. Moving on, we have 31 in the Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. And then 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame Frost Shock and magic damage by 10%. Now, moving over to the last red tree. Excuse me, guys. I'm going to grab a quick drink. And that is because of my freaking allergies. I apologize for that. Alright. Then we have 20 into heavy armor focus. This increases our physical resistance by 20, or by 1900, while wearing 5 or more pieces of heavy armor. And then we are going to move on to the green tree. Starting with the first one, we have Warlord, reduces your break free cost by 16%. With 40 points. We have 16 in a Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 10%. We have 16 in a Bashing Focus, reducing our bash cost by 10%. Moving on to the middle tree here, we have 75 into Arcanist. This increases our mag recovery by 14%. Now, we wear 1 piece of light armor. That's another 4% on top of that. So we actually get an 18% increase in mag recovery. But we also have other mag recovery from being a Sork, and then also passives in our Mage Light. So we actually get quite a bit of mag recovery with this. And then we have 43 into Tenacity. This increases your Magicka and your Stamina return of your fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. Moving on to the final green tree, we have 40 into Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%. 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. And then moving on over here, we have 43 into Blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. We have 56 into Elfborn, increasing critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 20%. And then 56 into Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 12%. Moving on to the middle blue tree, we have 35 in the Staff Expert. This increases your light and heavy attacks with Destruction Staves, Restoration Staves, and Overload, which is a Sork ability, by 20%. And then we get 40 in the Mastered Arms, which increases your direct damage done with by 16%. And then finally, we have 40 in the Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. So we use all these different things to maximize our damage potential. Alright, now that we're done with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a quick dummy parse with this, and then after that we will go into a dungeon, and that way you guys can see what a dungeon is like. So oops, I did the wrong thing. So we did about 17k. Usually I can pull about 22k DPS with this thing. I don't know why I pulled so little, but I am going to go ahead and show you guys the results. We get a 3,746 spell damage with a 50% spell critical. We have a 70% critical damage with the 3,577 spell penetration. Not too bad. Our frags were hitting for roughly 20k, 24k, so that's pretty good. But I'm going to show you guys what this looks like in an organized group. So we are going to go over here and we're going to parse on this big Iron Atronach. This is for trial play and really for organized group play. So, same thing, potion, buffs. But this time we're going to actually use our Atronach. Oh, come on. But you can see we can pull about 32 to 33k DPS with this on the big guy. And that means if we're playing in a really well organized group. You're not always going to be in a perfect group like that, so don't expect perfection like that unless you are in a really good organized group. So normally you'll be pulling about 22 to 25k DPS depending on the group and the dynamics of the group. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this into a dungeon. I don't need to change anything to make it solo. It is already solo ready. That's the nice thing about this build. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Depths of Malatar. This is the latest dungeon added with the Wrathstone DLC. It's a very challenging group dungeon. If you've never done this one before, it can be really challenging. And then on top of that, it's considered one of the more difficult, challenging veteran dungeons. Now, we are doing this on normal difficulty. I can also solo on veteran. I just prefer doing it on normal because that's how I'm going to solo it anyways. It's on normal. I'm never going to solo a dungeon on veteran mode. Unless I'm very skilled at the knowings of that dungeon inside and out. So that means I have to have ran it at least 3 times. That's why I like that ability, by the way. I love doing this. Roast. Goodbye. Alright, now we're going to go in and we're going to actually face down the boss of the dungeon. The first boss, that is. Now, this is a kind of a difficult boss if you don't know the mechanics. I actually was talking to somebody today who tried soloing this, and they said they were having a lot of troubles with it. The thing you have to understand about this boss is when you see that happen, get out of the way, because he's going to hit you with a lot of AoEs. Oops. Now I'm going to go ahead and, of course, when he does this one, I'm going to let him go ahead and kill me, if he can kill me. I do heal for a lot, so it can be kind of hard. Alright, he did kill me. So we are going to way shrine back to the beginning, but this is just so you guys can see the effectiveness of this build in solo content, or solo play, and also in what it would be considered group content. And then the parsing is to show you the effectiveness of its damage. Now, I don't show parsing on tanks, or healers, because there's really no reason, because they're not damage dealers. They do different roles. But that is it, my friends, for the Arcane Battlemage. So, to the one out there who is asking me, can you make this and show me what it would be like? There you go. I hope you're watching, because this one's just for you. But I want to share it with the rest of you guys, because I think that some of you might really like it. And that is it for this video. So you guys know what that means. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.